Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. In the hush of a shifting dune, where winds have whispered for thousands of years, there lies a grain of sand beneath something small, ordinary, easily missed. But hidden within that speck is a tale older than words. Sand is made not in silence but in force, in grinding and shattering, a memory of mountains ground to dust, of rivers that ran until rocks were smooth, of oceans that tossed pebbles like lullabies. And in rare, rare moments, that sand is changed. Not slowly, but in an instant, when pressure wraps itself around heat, when earth clenches its teeth or lightning kisses the beach, something impossible happens. The softest thing becomes the hardest. Time is made transparent. Let us drift now gently into one such moment, deep beneath the crust of the earth where heat curls like a sleeping dragon and the ground dreams in tectonic murmurs. Pressure grows. Rock against rock, plate against plate, every moment carries weight, every second adds to the squeeze, and then, all at once, the world shifts. A quake stirs the deep, pressure explodes into energy, layers press together like folded cloth, and in that crushing embrace quartz and feldspar melt, not wildly, not chaotically, but precisely. They fuse, they forget their jagged forms, they surrender to unity. The result is not chaos, but clarity. What was once sand becomes glass. We call it metamorphism, but it's something gentler than its name. It is the soft consent of matter to change, the elegant agreement of time and heat. In this cave of pressure, no light is needed. Glass does not form in sunlight. It forms in stillness, in deep time. Obsidian, that dark volcanic mirror, is born this way, and sharp, cold, reflective of the violence it came from, yet still. It cools so fast it forgets to crystallize. It becomes pure, and that purity, that clarity, is what makes glass special. It holds no memory of structure, only of transformation. The earth does not rush. In deserts, lightning sometimes dances across dunes, a white streak against a bronze canvas. When it strikes, the sand fuses. The result is a fulgurite, a glass root made by the sky. These are glass shaped by a lightning's brief anger, a fossil of an instant. Jagged, hollow, reaching downwards as though the storm was trying to root itself in the soil. People call them petrified lightning, but they are more than that. They are the solidified breath of a storm. But not all glass is born from violence. Some glass is whispered into being. Along the ocean floor, hydrothermal vents exhale heat into the cold deep. Lava seeps out like ink from a slow pen. When it meets seawater, it cools too quickly to organize and becomes glass. Pillow lavas, round, smooth stones that look almost like bubbles, are the ocean's quiet sculpture. Inside them, volcanic glass. Clear, uncut stories waiting to be seen. We think of glass as man-made, a thing of windows and bottles. But glass is older than civilization. It is a story the Earth has told long before humans gave it shape. Even in space, on the moon's surface, glass beads have been found, formed by meteoric collisions that melted regolith into shimmering droplets. They cooled as they flew, frozen tears scattered across the silence. What strikes melts. What melts clears. What clears remembers. Imagine this now, the first human to find natural glass. Perhaps in a desert, holding a strange dark shard that caught the sun in ways no rock ever had. Was it a gift from gods? A fallen star? A mirror to see the soul? That shard may have cut flesh, but it also carved tools. It became memory's edge, a means of survival, the beginning of knowing. The pressure that made it invisible, buried, ancient, had now shaped the human world. Glass is not just about clarity, it is about transition. Sand to silence, chaos to form, time paused in motion. Every piece of volcanic glass, every fulgurite, every microbead on the moon tells a story not just of force but of surrender. the willingness of nature to change when conditions ask it to. And so we hold glass in our homes, never thinking of the fire it passed through, or the weight that crushed it, or the stars that once shaped it. Now, close your eyes for a moment. Think of a single grain of sand. Imagine its journey up from mountain to river to shore. Then imagine it again, under pressure, under flame, and finally imagine it clear, glass, still warm, waiting to be held. That is the pressure that turned time clear. Now let's drift deeper, into the invisible threads that connect the glass beneath our feet to the stars above. The transformation of sand into glass is not merely an act of heat and pressure, it is a whisper passed from geology to biology, from physics to emotion. Every time we look through a pane of glass or run our fingers across a polished obsidian blade, we are not just touching a material, we are touching a moment of change that the Earth once embraced. It begins with structure, with the way atoms arrange themselves. In a crystal like quartz, every molecule knows its place. It's a pattern, repeating, stable, prow. But when glass is born, it lets go of that order. Its atoms drift, settle wherever they land, freezing in a dance that never repeats. This disarray is not chaos, it is freedom. There's a strange beauty in that. That glass, so smooth and perfect to our eyes, is made from molecules that never quite agreed where to stand. They are locked in confusion, but that confusion holds light. Because glass, you see, is transparent not by design, but by accident. When atoms don't form rigid patterns, light can pass through more easily. There are fewer boundaries for it to bounce off, and so glass becomes a silent tunnel for the sun, a story of disorder that shines. In this way, glass carries a lesson not just in physics but in life, that sometimes clarity is born from letting go of strict order, that beauty can emerge from what seems imperfect, and in science, we often find that same paradox. The universe moves toward entropy, yet in its randomness, it gives rise to stars, to cells, to thought. Glass is one of the purest examples of this. It is the middle point between solid and liquid, frozen flow, a state that defies category. It does not fit, and that is exactly what makes it shimmer. Now think of how humans learned to shape it. At first, they only used what nature gave. Volcanic glass, chipped into tools sharp as memory. But then came the fire. Somewhere someone placed sand into flame and waited. Perhaps it was an accident, perhaps a curiosity. But what emerged was unlike stone, unlike metal. It was clear. It caught the world like water does, holding it softly. Glass became our way of seeing things we couldn't touch, the stars through telescopes, the tiniest cells under microscopes. It became our boundary between the inside and outside, between now and far away. Even the oldest civilizations knew the power of this transformation. In Mesopotamia, glass beads were worn as talismans. In Egypt, artisans shaped coloured glass into symbols of eternity. The Romans blew it into vases and vessels, using air and breath to mould sand's bones. And every time the story repeated, take what is common, apply heat and reveal something rare. This idea, that inside ordinary things lives a hidden elegance, is at the heart of both science and art. But let's stay close to nature for a while longer. In the desert, where the air is dry and the earth remembers its volcanic past, sand still waits for the strike of lightning. Fulgurites remain rare, delicate, often buried. To hold one is to cradle the frozen path of a bolt from the heavens. They feel like secrets, hollow tubes with rough outsides, as if the sky itself dug its fingers into the ground. And when you look inside, the walls sparkle. You're peeking down the tunnel of an instant. Time moves fast enough to melt, then stops suddenly enough to preserve. It's a reminder that the world is always on the edge of change. And elsewhere, under the ocean, in the black quiet where light never goes, another kind of glass is being born. As lava flows from ridges and cracks along the seafloor, it hits the chill of the deep water, and in that meeting, fire and cold dark and darker, it becomes volcanic glass. Pillow lavas puff up like sleeping creatures, smooth on the outside, heavy inside. Their glass shells crack over time, spilling minerals that form the birthplace of life. Around hydrothermal vents, strange organisms bloom. ones that don't need sunlight, only heat and chemistry. In that silence, glass is not just a product. It is a shelter, a container of beginnings. Now let your thoughts float further still out past our planet. On the moon, on Mars, even on asteroids, wherever collisions have happened, glass has followed. Meteorites strike hard, and in the burst of heat soil melts. Drops fly outward, cool in flight, and scatter like glimmering beads. Apollo astronauts brought back these tiny spheres from the lunar surface. Not jewels, but memories. They are evidence of violence that happened so far away so long ago, yet still glisten in our hands. And so, we return to Earth, changed by this knowledge. Every pane of glass in a window is a cousin to these cosmic remnants. Every screen we touch, every lens we look through has a genealogy of impact and flame. Even the smartphone in your pocket holds within it silica refined by fire, made clear not by nature, but by precision. The tools we use to see, to know, to connect, all rely on glass. Yet we forget the pressure it took to make it. The ancient heat, the lightning strike, the volcanic breath, the surrender of structure for the gift of light. Let's hold that awareness for a moment, that the material we see through is one we rarely see for itself, that transparency is not a lack of story, but the result of many stories woven together. Sand is patient, fire is quick, pressure is slow. Together they make something that neither alone could do. They make a bridge, not of stone or steel, but of clarity. Something to look through, and yet still see wonder within. Let's drift now toward the end of this journey, following the last glimmers of heat where they cool into memory. Glass, in all its quiet beauty, is not a final state. It is a held moment, a pause. It exists in between structure and chaos, between time and timelessness, between the invisible forces of transformation and the visible clarity they leave behind. When we look through a window, we do not think of the sand it came from or the volcano it might once have touched. But if we close our eyes, we can imagine it, the mountain that crumbled into dust, the storm that cracked open the sky, the fire that softened stone into light. That is the story of glass, a soft ending to a violent beginning. Throughout history, humans have tried to imitate this transformation. We built furnaces hotter than volcanoes. We crushed stones finer than deserts. We added minerals, changed colours, shaped it into tools and temples. We turned it into mirrors to see ourselves, and into lenses to see the stars. We laid it in churches, where coloured light danced like stories on the floor, and in doing so we joined a much older rhythm, one that began not with us but with the earth, one that whispered, even the roughest things can become clear. But the story doesn't stop at seeing. Glass became a vessel for thought. In the earliest telescopes, Galileo watched Jupiter's moons spin like fireflies in the sky. Through hand-ground lenses, Newton saw rainbows in white light. Glass gave birth to science not because it told us what to think, but because it let us look. It became the boundary between the known and the unknown. Not a wall, but a window. Even now, every lab, every satellite, every microscope carries with it a little piece of this clarity. And all of it begins with sand, heat, and time. There's a kind of poetry in that the very force which breaks mountains, the push of tectonic plates, the strike of lightning, the fall of a meteor, can also create something so delicate, so precise. That pressure, when given the right conditions, doesn't destroy, it transforms. We often fear pressure. We associate it with harm. But nature tells us another truth, that pressure, in the company of patience and fire, makes beauty, it makes clarity, it makes glass, and glass in return holds us. Think of a greenhouse where light enters and warmth stays. Think of a lighthouse lens, guiding ships home with refracted beams. Think of stained glass windows where stories live in colour. Think of the jars that keep our food, the fibres that carry our voices across oceans, the screens where we see distant faces. All of these are born from the same moment, when sand said yes to change. Even broken glass has a voice. A shattered bottle still sings in the light. Its edges may be sharp, but its story is intact. Every fragment remembers the transformation, and sometimes, in the world of geology, broken glass becomes whole again. When volcanic glass is buried, compressed, warmed again, it can slowly crystallize. Over thousands of years, what was once clear begins to grow ordered again. It becomes stone, not just in body but in memory. A full cycle, from chaos to clarity to crystal. Nature is not in a hurry. It allows for return. We too are made of stories like these. Our lives are filled with pressure and flame, with strikes and surrender, with change we didn't choose. But like glass, we hold those changes. We become transparent in some ways, more reflective in others. We carry light through what was once dark. We become windows, lenses, mirrors. We crack sometimes, but we also shine. So next time you look through glass, a window, a bottle, a screen, pause. Remember the sand beneath your feet. Remember the heat inside the earth. Remember the lightning that danced. What you are seeing through is a gift made by force and stillness. A moment that held, that cooled, that cleared. Glass is not just something we look through. It is something that reminds us. The world changes, and so can we, gently, patiently, beautifully. And in that soft ending, we find ourselves back where we began, on the edge of a dune, where wind curls around your ankles and grains of sand tumble over each other. The sun leans low, the heat lingers in the ground. Somewhere far away a storm gathers, and perhaps tonight the sky will touch the earth again. Perhaps by morning the sand will have become something new. Not just dust, not just memory, but light made solid. That is what happens when pressure turns time clear. It begins in soreness, a heavy humming kind of sounds, the kind that presses against your skin before a storm arrives. High above the sleeping deserts and quiet mountains, the sky is gathering something ancient. The air is thick with anticipation, thick with invisible threads of charge pulling across the atmosphere. Then, with no warning, the sky splits. A blinding vein of light cracks through the darkness. It does not fall gently. It carves, it strikes, it tears its way down from the clouds to the ground in a single furious instant. This is lightning, raw, electric and older than memory. And when it finds the earth, when it meets sand or stone, it leaves behind more than heat. It leaves behind a wound made of glass. Now let's step closer. Not to the lightning itself, that door would be too fast, too bright, too loud, but to its footprints, left behind in the earth. These footprints are called fulgurites, and they are unlike anything else on Earth. Long, narrow branching tubes of glass, formed when lightning melts the ground as it passes through. It happens in less than a second. Temperatures rise to thousands of degrees. Sand does not burn, it transforms. The grains melt and fuse, drawn upward or downward, along the path the lightning took. When the heat vanishes as fast as it came, all that remains is a fragile tunnel of once molten earth, a memory of a moment most never see. Fulgurites are glass, but not like the kind we shape into windows or bottles. They are wild glass, forged not in ovens but in storms. They are crooked, hollow, rough. Their surfaces ripple like cooled lava, their shapes twisted by the chaos of the strike. Some are just a few inches long, others stretch for meters beneath the sand. They don't shine like gemstones, but if you look closely they glint, little stars trapped in a tube, and they are so delicate that even holding one feels like cradling silence. But they are not just beautiful, they are also records. Each fulgurite captures something no camera can, a direct interaction between sky and ground, a point where a force from the heavens became solid. Scientists study them to understand how lightning travels, how energy moves through soil, how heat changes matter in an instant. Some even contain trapped gases, tiny bubbles that tell us what the air was like at the moment of formation. Inside these strange glass tubes is not just a story of violence, but a quiet whisper of the world in that one breath of time. And yet, despite their rarity, fulgurites are not new. They have been forming for millions of years. Even before humans walked the earth, lightning was striking deserts and beaches, fusing sand into glassy roots beneath the surface. Some ancient fulgurites have been found fossilized, buried under layers of rock, preserved like bones. In them we see a different kind of fossils, not of life but of energy, of the brief moment when the sky reached down and etched itself into stone. Let's imagine now, gently, the path of that lightning bolt. It begins as a quiet gathering of charge in the sky, a cloud swelling with potential. Then a connection is made, a path is cleared. and down it comes, not in a beam, but in a dance. Forked, flickering, twisting like a branch in wind. When it touches the ground, it is not simply touching it, it is transforming. And in that transformation we are reminded that the earth is never really still, that the sky is not far away, that even in silence the world is always charging, always waiting for the moment to connect. There's something poetic in how this moment, so loud and fast and violent, leaves behind something so quiet. You can walk past a fulgurite and never notice it. You can pick it up and not realize you're holding lightning's shadow. And yet that is what it is, the solid trace of light that travelled faster than thought. It is a story caught in matter, a conversation between elements. And like all glass, fulgurites exist because of surrender. The sand does not resist the heat. It yields, it melts, it flows and reforms. The result is not destruction, but a new shape. And in that shape we see that impact does not always break. Sometimes it builds. Sometimes what is left behind is not ash or ruin, but a new form, one that carries within it the memory of connection. So next time thunder rumbles in the distance and lightning dances across the sky, think of what may be happening below. Think of the sand fusing, the earth reshaping, the glass forming underground where no eye can see. Somewhere even now the sky is carving itself into the world, quietly, beautifully. And one day someone may dig up that thread of glass and hold it in their hand, not knowing they are holding a piece of a storm. Let's wander deeper into the story of this wild glass, not just to admire it, but to feel its place in the slow pulse of Earth. The lightning that creates fulgurites may strike in an instant, but its effects ripple across time. Every fulgurite is a frozen gesture, a single moment of connection between the heavens and the ground. But the forces that allow such a moment to exist are much older. They begin with weather, with water evaporating into the sky, with sunlight warming ocean currents, with winds dancing over mountains. Storms are born from gentle imbalance, a touch too much warmth here, a drift too much cold there, until the sky holds more energy than it can contain, and when it can no longer hold it, it releases it, not in whispers but in light. Each bolt of lightning contains more power than we can easily grasp. It is hotter than the surface of the sun, it travels faster than a blink, and in that brief flash it sculpts the earth. But not all earth is equal in its response. Sand, rich in quartz and silica, is uniquely ready. Its tiny grains, smooth and ancient, lie loose and light. When struck they melt, not uniformly but with quick fury, flowing together into a molten stream. As the bolt grounds itself and vanishes, the air and earth cool the trail almost instantly. The result is not chaos, but a form, sharp, crooked, unmistakable, like the roots of a tree that grew in a moment. These tree-like fulgurites tell us more than just where lightning struck. They also show us how the earth remembers. For every one that forms, hundreds of strikes leave no trace. But when the conditions are just right, the right kind of sand, the right humidity, the right speed, the earth chooses to record. And when we dig them up, we are reading those records. Not just of electricity, but of time, of chance, of sudden change. They remind us that not all stories are told in words. Some are whispered in minerals shaped by invisible hands. Scientists who study fulgurites do more than just measure their shape. They analyze the gases trapped inside, the isotopes in the fused glass, the tiny bubbles that formed as molten silica cooled. These details can tell us about the ancient atmosphere, about the strength of the storm, about the minerals present in the soil at the time. In some fulgurites, researchers have found signs of life, organic molecules preserved in the rapid sealing of heat and glass. It's as if the lightning captured not just the earth, but the breath of the place. These are more than curiosities. They are time capsules, snapshots of a world in the middle of becoming something else. And yet, for all their scientific value, fulgurites carry an emotional weight too. There is something almost sacred about them. In many ancient cultures, lightning was a divine language, a message from the gods, a symbol of judgment or transformation or rebirth. To find its residue hidden beneath the soil is to touch that mythology. In some traditions, fulgurites were kept as talismans, believed to hold the power of the storm itself. Others saw them as gifts, proof that the heavens had once reached down to kiss the ground. And maybe, in a quiet way, they still are. If you hold a fulgurite to the light, you'll see more than just glass. You'll see memory. Not your memory, but the Earth's. a filament of fused matter that was never meant to be seen, a hidden path carved in silence. You'll feel the fragility of it, the way it can crumble if pressed too hard, and realize how delicate the moment was that made it, how balance and violence coexisted just long enough to create beauty. There is something humbling about this, that the strongest forces of nature can create something so easily broken, that the sky's loudest voice leaves behind a quiet artifact, and it reminds us too that impact is not always visible, that sometimes what shapes us most happens deep beneath the surface, where no one sees, in a single flash we barely remember. That change, like lightning, is often sudden, but what it leaves behind can last forever. In some parts of the world, people go searching for fulgurites after storms. They walk the dunes or beaches slowly, scanning the sand for a hint of glass. It takes patience, it takes a gentle hand, but when they find one, when they brush away the sand and reveal the twisted route of light, they are witnessing a transformation that happened without witness, and by finding it, they become part of its story. Even now, as we build machines to study weather and energy, we cannot fully predict lightning. It remains a mystery, a wild card in the sky, but we can understand its effects. We can hold its aftermath, and in that glass we can hear an echo of the storm. Not its sound, but its form. A silent bolt made visible. So let your thoughts linger there a moment longer. Beneath your feet, the earth holds these secret glass tunnels. Most will never be found. They will stay hidden beneath sand and soil, sleeping quietly, long after the sky has cleared. But if you listen closely, if you hold one in your hand, you might just feel it. The warmth of the ancient heat, the hush after the strike, and the line of energy frozen in place. This is what happens when lightning carves through stone. It does not destroy, it reveals. Now let us move softly toward the end of this luminous path, tracing the final arc of the lightning's memory as it fades into glass and time. The fulgurite, once a vein of fire stitched into sand, now rests quietly beneath the surface. No longer hot, no longer humming with charge, it is only glass now. But not only. It is still, yes, but it holds within it the shape of energy. It holds within it the sky's old fingerprint. And what is a fingerprint, if not a mark that something passed through? A reminder of presence, of contact, of change. When we think of lightning, we think of power, sudden, loud, terrifying. But what it leaves behind, in these quiet glass roots, is a contradiction. Fragility born of force, a sculpture made not by hand, but by temperature, speed, and surrender. It is in this contradiction that fulgurites gain their meaning. They are not just artifacts, they are lessons in contrast, in how something that tears through the world in milliseconds can give birth to something delicate, slow, and enduring. There is a kind of forgiveness in the glass. The earth does not hold a grudge against the sky. It receives the strike, allows the pain, transforms and rests. The fulgurite does not resent the lightning. It is its child. And perhaps we too can take something from that. That pain, sudden and sharp as it may be, sometimes leaves behind a strange kind of beauty, not in the wound, but in what the wound becomes. Over years, these hidden glass roots may shift with the soil. Rain may bury them deeper. Time may wear them down, but some are found, held up to the light, studied, cherished, remembered. They are taken from the ground and placed on shelves, or passed from hand to hand with awe, and each time they are seen, the storm is seen again, not in noise or danger, but in shape and silence. But not all fulgurites are destined for human hands. Many will remain beneath the earth, unseen for centuries. Some will be broken by roots, by movement, by time. Some will dissolve slowly into sand once more. And this too is part of their story. That transformation is not just about birth, but about return. That the glass made in one flash of lightning will one day be sand again, and perhaps many years from now become glass once more. The cycle is never lost. It only sleeps. Glass, in this sense, is not just a material. It is a traveller, moving between states, from solid to liquid to solid again. From order to chaos to form, it moves not in steps, but in leaps, like lightning itself. Glass remembers not through words, but through arrangement, through its disorder, through its shine. And as our story draws to a close, let us step back once more and see the bigger pattern. Lightning is not rare. It strikes the earth millions of times each day, but only in the right places, under the right conditions, does it leave a fulgurite behind. Only sometimes does the Earth say, "Yes, I will remember this." And maybe we are like the Earth in that way. We cannot hold every moment, but some moments strike deep enough to leave behind a shape, a new path, a quiet structure, hidden yet real. The next time a storm rolls over your home and thunder rumbles in the distance, close your eyes and imagine it. A streak of lightning arcing through the sky, striking a beach, a dune, a dry riverbed. The sand flashes to molten brightness, flows, then cools. In a blink, something new exists. Beneath that very spot, a glass root begins its long sleep. And for years, maybe forever, it will stay there, a ghost of a storm, a memory turned into matter. We don't need to see the strike to believe in its impact. We don't need to feel the heat to trust the transformation. The glass is enough. It tells us everything. That change can be sudden, that it can be fierce, that it can be beautiful, that the Earth, like us, feels things deeply and holds on in its own quiet way. So now imagine you are holding one, a fulgurite, rough and narrow in your palm. It feels almost too light to be real. Its surface is uneven, its colour muted. But when you turn it toward the sun, it glitters faintly, and in that flicker is the path of a lightning bolt. In that glint is the sky's old anger, transformed into something gentle, something that asks to be looked at, not feared, something that waits quietly to be understood. This is what happens when lightning carves through stone. It does not only destroy, it illuminates, it creates, it teaches, and long after the thunder fades, its lesson remains, rooted in glass, waiting in the soil, still holding light. In the stillness of deep earth, where time folds over itself like layers of soft cloth, there lies a kind of silence that is not empty. It is filled with echoes. Echoes not of voices, but of pressure, of movement, of heat and cold, of memory. Beneath the deserts and oceans, beneath forests and plains, the earth holds on to traces of what once was. These echoes find their way into minerals, into tiny pockets of air, into grains of sand that once flowed as rivers. And sometimes, under just the right conditions, they are sealed inside silica, the very substance that becomes glass. Like thoughts caught in amber, these ancient moments rest inside transparent skins, untouched, unseen, but never lost. Silica is one of the most abundant minerals on Earth. Found in quartz, in sand, in the dust we sweep from our windowsills, it is everywhere, quiet, unassuming. But when heated, when pressured, when struck by the lightning or folded by the Earth's deep hands, it changes. It fuses into glass. And when that happens, anything nearby, air, water, pollen, even the tiniest organism, can become trapped. Suspended inside this sudden clarity, like insects inside a drop of amber, these are the echoes trapped in silica skins. Fossils not of bone but of breath. Let us imagine softly how this happens. A droplet of volcanic glass forms, hot, flowing, alive with motion. As it cools, faster than crystals can form, it locks into place. In that instant, anything inside becomes permanent, an ancient raindrop, a whiff of atmosphere. The faint imprint of a bacterium, all sealed, all held. These trapped elements become storytellers, whispering to scientists thousands or even millions of years later about the world as it was, not through sentences, but through structure, through chemistry, through presence. Sometimes these stories are found in tektites, small glassy pebbles formed when meteorites strike Earth. The impact is so hot and fast that Earth is flung into the sky, melting as it flies. As it cools mid-air, these droplets become glass, falling back to Earth like rain. Inside them, the story of impact lives on. They are smooth, often dark, shaped like tears or buttons, each one born in fire and speed. And within some, bubbles of ancient atmosphere remain, tiny capsules of air from the moment of impact. To hold one is to hold the breath of a catastrophe softened into stillness. But not all echoes are dramatic. Some are slow. In the quiet corners of the world, silica-rich water moves through soil and stone, dripping into caves, rising into geysers, seeping into the bodies of plants. Over time, that silica coats what it touches. Leaves, wood, shells. The shapes remain, but the living tissue dissolves, replaced slowly by glass. This is how petrified forests are born. Not in a day, not in a year, but in age-all. Each tree becomes stone, but within that stone the grain of the wood still runs. The rings of seasons remain. The texture of bark can still be felt. These are not just fossils, they are echoes made visible. The forest, though long gone, speaks through its shape. And even in biology, silica plays a strange role. Some tiny creatures, diatoms and radiolarians, build their bodies out of it. They are microscopic, floating in oceans, rivers, lakes, unseen by the eye, yet they shape the earth beneath our feet. When they die, their silica shells drift down, piling into layers of white powder at the bottom of seas. Over time, those layers harden into rock, into chert, into flint, into the stones that ancient humans once chipped into tools. So in a very quiet way, the echo of a microorganism becomes the edge of a blade. The breath of water becomes a human hand, carving, building, surviving. And through all of this, it is the silica that holds the shape, that holds the echo, not because it remembers, but because it does not forget. Once trapped, these moments do not fade. They stay, encased, suspended, waiting. Now picture a single shard of volcanic glass, black, smooth, cold. You hold it in your palm and it reflects your face faintly. But inside Tambua and too small to see, there may be something ancient, a bubble of air untouched since before cities rose, a speck of ash from a long-dead tree, a mineral signature of an eruption that changed the sky. You would never know unless you studied it with instruments. But even if you don't, you're still holding a piece of time, a skin of silica filled with echoes. And so glass becomes not just a product of heat, but a vessel of history, a container for the accidental archives of nature. Where fossils speak of bodies, these glassy traces speak of conditions, of air, of flow, of touch. They do not rot, they do not crumble, they remain clear, unchanged, telling the story not of life's shapes, but of its surroundings. And through this clarity, we glimpse what it meant to exist, not in bold lines, but in shadows, in breaths, in silence. There is gentleness in that even the smallest things are kept, that the earth through silica does not judge what is important. It keeps what it touches, a breeze, a spore, a shimmer of gas. These things, so often unnoticed, become eternal not because they were grand, but because they were there at the right moment in the right place when the heat came and froze the world around them. And now they sleep in glass, waiting to be seen again. Let us now drift deeper into the quiet chambers of these trapped moments, where time does not pass as we know it, but instead hovers, paused within the smooth stillness of silica. To see a glass fragment under a microscope is to stare into a vault where time was sealed in an instant, never to move again. These echoes, preserved in molten cages, are not loud. They do not demand attention, but they are rich with meaning. In each bubble of ancient air, in each preserved structure of plant or plankton, lies an invisible map of the past. These are not artifacts in the usual sense. They are not tools or bones or carvings. They are contexts, frozen weather, hidden climates, vanished ecosystems. They are the quiet data that fills the spaces between the great events. And it is this soft background information that gives shape to history. Silica is one of the Earth's great archivists, but unlike ink on paper or carvings in stone, its records are accidental. It does not try to record. It simply hardens around whatever is present when the heat falls or the pressure seals. It captures without preference. It traps the pollen and the poison, the clean air and the dust, the signs of growth and the signs of decay. When a meteor slams into Earth and forms glass, that glass holds the composition of the rocks, the gases released, the speed of the strike. When a geyser coats a blade of grass in silica, that blade retains its gentle curves and texture, long after it should have crumbled. And when volcanic ash buries a landscape, the heat and minerals may turn its surfaces to glass, locking the imprint of leaves and feathers inside, like memories too delicate to fade. We often think of glass as a tool to see through, something that reveals what is beyond it. But these echoes in silica invite us to look inward, not outward. They do not show the distant world, but the intimate moment. A world caught mid-sentence, a gesture paused forever. For scientists, these silicate echoes are windows into past climates. Some glasses from ancient eruptions contain bubbles of air that, when carefully analysed, reveal carbon dioxide levels from thousands of years ago. Others hold water molecules, frozen at the moment the lava cooled. This water tells us about rainfall, about ocean vapour, about the living breath of the earth at the time the glass was formed. These findings help us piece together ancient weather, ice ages, extinctions, not through stories or fossils, but through chemistry, locked in place. But more than just information, these trapped traces offer us something else: perspective. They remind us that not all memory is conscious, not all history is told through language or preserved by human hands. Much of what endures does so in scents, in layers, in fragments of stone and glass buried under centuries of change. These echoes in silica are not only important because of what they say, but because of how softly they say it. They teach us that the earth listens and holds and remembers in ways we may never fully understand. Imagine, now, a scientist kneeling on the floor of a dried lake bed, brushing away dust from a sliver of natural glass. They carry it back to their lab, gently, carefully, and begin to examine it. Under powerful instruments, they find a cluster of microbubbles, each no larger than a grain of pollen. Inside those bubbles is air from 10,000 years ago, air that has never mixed with ours, never touched a lung. In its makeup are the ratios of gases that tell a story: what the temperature was, how much carbon drifted through the sky, what forest stood nearby. And in a flash, the present fades. The world becomes a little clearer, because of a shard of glass, because of an echo. Elsewhere, another researcher cracks open a tektite, dark and smooth from a cosmic impact long past. Inside, they find hints of minerals not native to that region, proof of how far and fast the Earth flung itself in the violence of the collision. The echo here is not just in what is present, but in what was moved, altered, reshaped. These stories stretch the idea of memory. They expand what it means to record, to hold, to carry the past forward. In the fossil record, some of the oldest known life forms, microbial mats, simple colonies of cells, are preserved not in stone but in glass. In places where volcanic ash rapidly cooled around them, their delicate bodies did not rot, but were outlined in silica. Some of these structures are over 3 billion years old. In them we see the very first whispers of life, and again it is silica that holds them. Not with intention, not with effort, but with silence, with stillness. There is a humility in this, that the material most capable of holding these traces, these quiet shadows of time, is not the strongest nor the rarest, nor the most precious. It is silica, common sand, ground beneath our feet. And yet through heat and pressure it becomes a vault, a mirror, a page, not through its design but through its willingness to change. So let us pause and appreciate what that means. That the world records itself not only in grand events but in soft impressions, that sometimes what remains is not the roar but the breath that came before it, the warmth before the fire, the silence after the storm, that through the still glass of ancient earth we might one day come to hear the shape of rain, the whisper of wind, the weight of sunlight from a time before humans, and maybe in holding these fragments we are reminded that we too leave traces, that our moments, our breath, our presence, our smallest movements may also find their way into the memory of the world. Not always in books or stone, but in the quiet spaces, in the layers we touch without knowing. That the glass beneath our feet may one day whisper to someone far ahead of us, telling them not just who we were, but how we were, not in declarations, but in echoes. Now let us walk gently toward the quiet conclusion of this tale, where the echoes caught in glass do not fade, but settle deeper into meaning. These traces in silica, so small, so easy to overlook, hold not just facts but feelings, the atmosphere of moments long past. They are not dramatic. They do not flash or shout. Instead, they wait, softly, eternally. And in that waiting, they tell us something about the world that no story or fossil ever could. They remind us that memory is not always loud. Sometimes it is suspended in stillness. Beneath ancient volcanic fields, where the land once bled molten fire, sheets of obsidian still shimmer under the dust. These dark mirrors formed in moments of chaos, yet their surfaces are so smooth they can reflect a face. Within them are locked the gases of the eruption, the chemistry of the molten earth, the last breath of steam that tried to escape before the flow froze. When scientists sample these glasses, they find a chorus of quiet data about pressure, temperature, movement. But they also find more delicate things, the signs of plants that once grew nearby, the trace of water from ancient lakes, even pollen grains caught mid-flight. It is a symphony of the small preserved in the clarity of chance. Some glasses were, like Libyan desert glass born from an ancient meteor impact, hold even stranger echoes. This glass, pale yellow and scattered across vast desert stretches, is older than any city. It formed when a meteor exploded above the sands, its heat enough to melt the very ground. The result? Pieces of glass lying like forgotten stars in the dunes. Some were later carved into ornaments by early humans. One was even set into a pharaoh's necklace. And yet within each piece the impact still sings. Scientists found particles of extraterrestrial origin within the glass, small mineral voices from beyond Earth. These fragments remind us that echoes in silica are not just of this planet, but of space, of collisions that ripple beyond the sky. And still, closer to home, other echoes form slowly, not in heat, but in patience. In hot springs and geysers, silica-rich waters coat everything they touch. Twigs, leaves, even the feet of birds that stop to drink. These coatings harden layer by layer, until what once was soft is transformed into glassy stone. The shapes are delicate, intricate, almost too perfect to be real. In these quiet places, the earth is preserving touch. A feather caught on a branch, a ripple in the mud, the weight of a moment. These impressions may never be seen by more than a few, but that doesn't make them less sacred. In the language of geology, they are called sinter deposits. In the language of wonder, they are frozen stillness. Through all these forms, volcanic, meteoric, aqueous, the message is the same. That glass, born of transformation, becomes a vessel. That the ordinary, sand, heat, water, time, when aligned, become extraordinary, and that every echo preserved in these silica skins is a soft rebellion against forgetting. It is nature's way of keeping its breath, of holding its pause. Now imagine yourself standing in a lab, a sliver of ancient glass resting on a slide beneath a microscope. The room is quiet. The light is soft. As you adjust the lens, you begin to see not cracks or flaws, but windows, tiny chambers, each holding something different. A bubble, a dust grain, a folded piece of mineral, and in that moment you're no longer just looking, you're listening. Listening to what the earth once was, to what the air once held, to what drifted by in the second before everything changed. Or perhaps you are in the field, walking across a plain where ancient glass lies scattered, like forgotten thoughts. You pick up a piece, smooth, warm from the sun, and you feel its weight. It is not heavy, but it holds gravity. You turn it over in your hands, and you wonder, what does this piece know? What did it see? What drifted through the sky when it formed? And in that quiet moment, you are part of its story too. You are now one of the echoes it carries forward. Because glass, for all its stillness, is never truly silent. It reflects, it refracts, it responds. And even as it holds its ancient guests, air, ash, life, it continues to gather new ones. A fingerprint, a breath, a whisper from the present. It holds the past, yes, but it also meets the now, and perhaps in another 1,000 years, someone else will hold the same shard you did and wonder what your moment felt like. This is the soft miracle of echoes trapped in silica skins, that even when everything else falls away, the trees, the rivers, the voices, something remains, not as a monument, but as a whisper, not as a script, but as a sensation, a shape, a shadow, a shimmer. And so we end where we began, with a grain of sand touched by heat transformed into glass, with that glass touched by wind, by time, by the smallest things, and with those things held forever, not because they were important, but because they were present, because they were there when the world opened, when the silica flowed, when stillness arrived. They became part of the Earth's memory, and now, by noticing them, so do we. Beneath the crust of the earth, where the darkness is thick and warm, volcanoes breathe, not with lungs, not with sound, but with motion, a slow and ancient exhale that rises from the molten heart of the planet. This breath moves upward through cracks and faults, carrying with it heat, pressure, minerals, and memory. When it reaches the surface, it bursts forth as lava, ash, and gas, a spectacle of power, of release. And though the eruption seems loud and chaotic, something quiet happens in its wake. As the molten world meets air or sea or snow, it cools too fast to settle into crystal. It locks itself in place, and from that moment of stillness, glass is born. A breath frozen, a story sealed. This volcanic glass is called obsidian. Smooth, dark, reflective. It is not rare, but it is remarkable. Formed when lava rich in silica cools rapidly, it hardens before its atoms can find order. The result is a textureless mirror, a substance without a clear grain or structure. But though it lacks internal form, it carries immense clarity. Obsidian is a paradox, born from fire yet cold to the touch, fragile yet sharper than steel, formless inside yet shaped by the world that made it. It is the still image of movement, the sudden pause in Earth's long breath. Let us drift now through the places where this breath becomes visible. Along volcanic domes and lava flows, you can find sheets of obsidian lying like spilled ink across the landscape. They glisten in the sun, edges curved like waves frozen mid-crest. To walk among them is to walk on a moment that once boiled, now stilled. Every fragment is a sentence in the language of eruption. Every shimmer is a trace of heat made soft. Obsidian tells us not just about lava, but about the conditions that allowed it to become glass. The chemistry, the temperature, the speed of cooling, the way air met fire and said, "Stop here." But obsidian is only one voice in the chorus of volcanic glass. There are others, less known but just as telling. Pele's tears, tiny droplets of glass named after the Hawaiian goddess of volcanoes, form when gas bubbles burst from lava fountains, flinging molten bits into the sky. They cool mid-air, becoming black or golden beads that scatter across the ground. They are small enough to slip through your fingers, but inside them is the entire violence of a volcano's breath condensed into a speck. Sometimes the wind stretches the molten glass into hair-like strands called Pele's hair, delicate golden threads that can tangle in trees or drift like whispers on the breeze. They are fragile, yes, but strong enough to last if left untouched. They are the breath, spun fine. Volcanic glass is more than a byproduct. It is a memory. It forms where change was most sudden, where temperature dropped like a curtain, where motion collapsed into stillness. Even beneath the sea, where lava pours from ridges along the ocean floor, glass forms. There it creates pillow lavas, rounded mounds with glassy rinds, their surfaces smooth, their insides warm. In these deep places, the breath of volcanoes shapes the very bed of the ocean, and though no eye sees it happens still. The earth continues to breathe, to cool, to remember in glass. Within each shard of volcanic glass is a chemical map. It tells scientists about the gases released during the eruption, the minerals present, the age of the event. It carries isotopes that date the moment it formed. In some glasses, you can find tiny crystals, minerals that began to form before the lava froze. These inclusions are like seeds of order, surrounded by a sea of glassy disarray. They are the halfway thoughts of magma, cut short by cold, and they too tell us the rhythm of eruption. But perhaps the most haunting quality of volcanic glass is how human it feels. Obsidian, once shaped by hands, becomes tool, becomes mirror, becomes memory. Ancient peoples across the world used it to craft blades so sharp they could part skin without pain. They carved figurines, made jewelry, built rituals around its reflective surface. In Mesoamerican temples, obsidian mirrors were used for divination, to see not the world behind you, but the world within. It became not just a material, but a medium for thought, for belief, for memory. And in every shard, the volcano breathes still. So when we speak of volcanic glass, we are speaking not just of rock or heat or eruption. We are speaking of transformation, of a world that melted and then held its shape, of a breath that rose from the belly of the earth, exhaled into fire and paused mid-sigh. Glass is that pause, that still point, a bridge between motion and silence, and in every piece we find of sea, or whether a spearhead in a museum, a bead in the dirt, a ripple on a hillside, we are touching the edge of that breath. Let us stay here a while longer, in this quiet place after eruption. The ground is cooling, the air is still, the shimmer of glass catches the low sun. You reach down, pick up a piece and feel how cold it is, how smooth. It tells you nothing with words, but it tells you everything, that the Earth moved, that it changed, that it stopped, just for a moment, and left behind this, a breath frozen in glass. Let's now move deeper into the breath of volcanoes, not as eruption, but as memory, quiet and preserved. For while the dramatic moment of a volcanic explosion captures our awe, it is in the aftermath, in the cooling and the subtle change from fire to stillness, where the true transformation unfolds. Volcanic glass does not roar, it does not burn forever, it cools, it settles, and in that act of surrender, it becomes one of the planet's most delicate forms of preservation. Obsidian, the most familiar of volcanic glasses, begins its life in chaos. Deep underground, magma forms from melted rock. It pulses upward through chambers and cracks, driven by heat and pressure, and when it finally bursts through the Earth's surface, it moves fast, it moves hot. But obsidian is born not at the height of the explosion, but in the moment just after, when that molten stream, once wild, begins to cool so rapidly it can no longer arrange its atoms, crystals cannot grow, order cannot form. And so a strange solid appears, one without internal pattern, yet fully formed on the outside. This is the essence of obsidian, disorder trapped in perfection, and yet this perfection is fragile. Unlike crystalline rocks, obsidian breaks easily. Its edges fracture in conchoidal curves, smooth shell-like shapes that form sharp points and blades. These curves are not random. They are the record of how the glass snapped under stress. They are echoes of the pressure that once held it together. Ancient peoples understood this, even without the language of science. Across continents and centuries, they shaped obsidian into tools, weapons, and sacred objects. A blade of obsidian is so sharp, so precise, that even modern surgeons have experimented with it for cutting delicate tissue. But long before microscopes and labs, hands knew, eyes knew. The glass spoke through its edge. Still, volcanic glass is not only useful, it is beautiful. Its surfaces reflect the world around them. Hold a large piece of obsidian and you'll see the sky bending over its skin. In the right light, it gleams like a pool of oil with swirls of brown, gold, even green. Sometimes tiny crystals form within, specks of magnetite or feldspar, and the glass shimmers with snowflake patterns, giving rise to snowflake obsidian. Each variation tells a different story about the lava that birthed it, its temperature, its cooling rate, its chemistry. These glasses become geological fingerprints, marking the exact mood of the Earth in that moment. Beyond obsidian, other volcanic glasses offer softer whispers of formation. Pumice, for instance, forms when lava rich in gases erupts explosively, creating a frothy, porous glass filled with bubbles. It floats on water, light as ash. Its surfaces are rough, almost weightless. But even here, the story is one of breath. Gas expanding, lava cooling, glass forming around absence. In every pore, a puff of Earth's last exhale. And in the silence that follows, this fragile rock drifts, sometimes for miles across oceans, until it reaches another shore. A volcanic breath, carried by water. In some parts of the world, entire layers of soil are made from volcanic glass particles, ashfall deposits that rained down in ancient eruptions, cooled mid-air, and settled like snow. Over time, these layers compress, mix, and weather. But the glass remains. Microscopic shards of it survive, their jagged edges still visible under magnification. Soil scientists use these grains to date eruptions, to trace the history of landscapes, to understand how life returned after the fire. In Iceland, in Japan, in the Pacific Northwest, volcanic glass tells the tale of resilience, of plants regrowing, of animals returning, of humans rebuilding on cooled ash. Perhaps one of the most touching examples of volcanic glass memory comes from Mount St. Helens. When it erupted in 1980, the blast stripped forests, buried rivers, and reshaped the mountain itself. But it also left behind vast deposits of ash and glass. For years, those landscapes were grey, barren, silent. But life crept back, and in the volcanic soil, rich in minerals, aerated by glass, wildflowers began to bloom. Lupines, then grasses, then trees. Scientists studied the regrowth closely, tracing how ecosystems healed. And always beneath the roots lay the glitter of glass, sharp, broken, yet quietly nourishing. Even on the ocean floor, volcanic glass does its quiet work. At mid-ocean ridges where tectonic plates pull apart and magma rises, lava erupts under pressure and cools rapidly into glassy pillows. Inside these pillows, hydrothermal fluids circulate. And in those fluids, life forms, strange bacteria that eat minerals, that thrive without sunlight. In these places, glass is more than memory. It is shelter. It is warmth. It is the bed on which life rests in the deep. And still deeper within the earth, glass waits, not always visible, not always exposed, but buried beneath layers of rock and time. Some of it may never see the light again. Some of it may melt once more, return to magma, rejoin the cycle. For volcanic glass is not permanent. It is always on the edge of change. Over long periods it devitrifies, that is, it slowly crystallizes, rearranging its atoms into more stable forms. The shimmer fades, the transparency dulls, and the breath once frozen begins to move again. It is a reminder that even glass, even silence is part of something larger, a rhythm that continues. So when you hold a piece of volcanic glass, you're holding more than stone. You're holding pause. You're holding the second when heat became shape, when movement became memory. You're holding the breath of a volcano, not in its fire, but in its stillness. And in that stillness, there is a message that from the deepest places, beauty can rise, that from pressure and heat and change, something delicate can be born, and that the earth, even when it shouts, always ends in a whisper. Now let us linger gently in the final warmth of this story, in the hush that follows eruption, where glass glows softly beneath the ash. Volcanic glass, in all its forms, obsidian, pumice, tephra, sinter, is not just a material. It is a way the earth speaks, not in volume but in memory, not in permanence but in pause. It holds the breath of a moment that once roared, then stilled, then cooled into something that could be held in your palm. This breath, frozen in glass, continues to shape the world around it in ways both vast and hidden. In museum drawers and desert sands, on mountain tops and deep sea floors, the fragments of volcanic glass whisper their origins to anyone willing to listen. They carry inside them not just the chemistry of magma, but the fingerprint of motion, the trace of air, the echo of heat. In scientific laboratories, they are sliced and scanned, read like diaries of the earth. Their composition reveals the kind of eruption, the direction of the blast, velocity of cooling. But beyond the data, they also offer wonder, that such sudden force could leave behind something so precise, so delicate, that the most violent expressions of the Earth's inner life can cool into tools, mirrors, ornaments, and stories. And humans, drawn to light and reflection, have always listened. In obsidian mirrors, ancient people saw more than their faces. They saw ancestors, dreams, possibilities. In blades, they found not just function, but elegance, the perfect break, the clean edge. In beads and figurines, they honoured the gods, or perhaps simply marked beauty where once there was flame. Volcanic glass has always had this dual nature, scientific and sacred. A stone born of fire that behaves like water. It cuts like a whisper. It reflects like memory. But even more powerful than its past is what volcanic glass teaches us about transformation. Every piece begins as something fluid, uncertain, untamed. And then, with the right conditions, a drop in temperature, a shift in environment, it changes, not slowly but instantly. What was molten becomes solid, what was wild becomes still, and yet inside that stillness all the energy remains. The atoms are unarranged, but not random. They are frozen in place by speed, not by lack of movement. Glass, in this way, is a balance between control and surrender. It forms not through force alone, but through release. Nature mirrors this truth in many places. A pond freezes, capturing the wind's last ripple. A leaf fossilizes, holding the shape of a season. A bubble in amber tells us of an insect's final flight. And so too does volcanic glass hold the Earth's last breath in a moment of change. It says, this is what it felt like to erupt. This is what silence looks like after flame. This is what transformation can become when it is allowed to rest. Even in the present, volcanic glass plays a role in human life. It is used in surgical tools, in polishing compounds, in soil conditioners, in research. We crush it, shape it, examine it. We build with it, even as it reminds us how fragile it is. In construction it insulates. In experiments it reveals. It is a teacher always, and perhaps it is also a mirror, showing us how to carry our own transformations, how to survive rupture, how to cool into something clear. Now imagine this. You are walking along a volcanic slope, cooled long ago. The ground beneath your feet is rough, scattered with black shards. You stoop, pick up one, turn it in your hand. Its edge glints in the sun. It is cool, though born of fire. It is light, though formed from molten stone. You hold it, and in holding it, you feel the earth's breath. You feel the moment it once expanded, rose, burst forth, and became still. And now it rests in your palm, not burning, not breaking, just being. This is the quiet gift of volcanic glass. It does not demand to be noticed, yet it tells us everything. That the earth moves, that it changes, that it sometimes erupts, but always returns to calm. That every breath, even the fiercest, has an end. And that in that ending something beautiful can remain. A shard, a glint, a mirror, a memory. As we step away from the volcano's edge, let us carry this truth with us. That transformation is not something to fear, that heat, pressure and motion do not always destroy. Sometimes they create, sometimes they clarify, sometimes they leave behind something as soft and sharp and silent as glass. And in that glass the breath of the volcano lives on, still warm, still shining, still whispering its story to the world. In the quiet of a desert where dunes rise like the backs of sleeping giants and the wind hums across the sands, you might stumble upon something strange, a glimmer, a shimmer, a piece of glass, pale yellow, soft edge but firm in your hand. It doesn't seem to belong here. It isn't worn like the sand around it. It gleams with a quiet defiance, as if it remembers something the desert has long forgotten. This is Libyan desert glass, a gem not made by volcanoes, nor by human hands, but by the sky itself. Born of impact, it is a memory of collision, the silent tear left behind when a meteor met the Earth. Long ago, perhaps 29 million years, a meteor streaked through the atmosphere over what is now the Sahara. It may have exploded in the air or slammed into the surface with unimaginable force. What happened in that instant was not slow, not gentle. Heat surged. The sand beneath the blast zone melted. Temperatures reached over 2,000 degrees Celsius. The quartz-rich sand fused into the glass almost instantly, spreading out in a vast sheet. As the fire faded and the air cooled, the melted earth hardened into something new. Not ash, not stone, but glass. Clear, golden, and pure. This was no ordinary transformation. It was the desert remembering its touch with the stars. Libyan desert glass lies scattered across hundreds of kilometers of barren land. It is not buried but exposed and resting where it cooled, preserved by the same dry air that whispers over it now. To hold a piece is to hold a moment of violence frozen in stillness. It feels soft to the fingers, yet it was born in the hardest impact. And its colour, ranging from light lemon to deep honey, is unlike anything made in fire alone. This is not just glass. It is starlight condensed. The Earth's own tear, hardened under pressure no creature could survive. Scientists study it not just for its beauty, but for its clues. Within its structure lie bubbles of ancient gas, particles of minerals altered by shock, and even tiny bits of the meteor itself, grains of cosmic dust, trapped like a whisper from beyond our world. Its purity is astonishing. Composed of nearly 98% silica, it is one of the cleanest natural glasses known to exist. This clarity tells us something profound. The conditions that created it were precise, complete, overwhelming. It was not just heat, it was instant transformation. And yet for all its alien origins, desert glass is deeply woven into human history. Thousands of years ago, early peoples of the Sahara found it. They picked it up, shaped it, worked it. The ancient Egyptians valued it deeply. In the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, a jewel rests on his ceremonial breastplate. The figure of a scarab beetle carved from Libyan desert glass. It gleams still, untouched by time. In that symbol ancient hands honoured the sky, the sun, and the power of light transformed. A piece of meteor-born glass, carried by a king, speaks across millennia. not in words but in clarity. Even today, desert travelers find pieces half buried in the dunes. They shine like fallen fragments of the moon. Some believe they hold power, others collect them for their beauty, but all who touch them feel their mystery, for they are unlike anything else, not volcanic, not synthetic, not ordinary. They are the result of the rarest kind of meeting, when the heavens kiss the earth with enough force to leave a scar, and that scar shines. Let's slow down and imagine that moment. A meteor, silent in the vacuum of space, tumbles toward Earth. It is cold, ancient, older than life. As it enters the atmosphere, friction sets it ablaze. It becomes fire. Below, the sand is still. Then in a flash the two meet. The explosion is immediate. The sand doesn't burn, it vanishes, it fuses, it becomes. And all around, glass forms, in waves, in sheets, in droplets, some smooth, some jagged, some perfect, all glowing. And in the silence that follows, the desert exhales. A new layer has been born. That is what Libyan desert glass is, a remnant of that breath. A pause in time, a reminder that Earth is not separate from the cosmos, but a participant in its rhythm. We do not just watch the stars. Sometimes they visit, sometimes they change us, and sometimes they leave behind gifts so quiet we nearly forget to look. But if you walk far enough, listen long enough, and feel the weight of one of these golden fragments in your palm, you will know you are not holding just sand or stone or story. You are holding impact, the transformation of light and force into memory, a gem born not from deep within the earth, but from far beyond its sky. Let us now journey further into the golden silence of the desert, where the light catches on ancient glass, and the wind carries whispers of the stars. Libyan desert glass is not merely the result of a collision. It is the record of a moment when two worlds met, the cosmic and the terrestrial, and in their meeting created something entirely new. This meeting, though sudden, left behind a legacy far more enduring than the meteor itself. The meteor disintegrated, its heat vanished, its shockwaves faded, but the glass remained. It cooled, hardened, and settled into the sands, waiting patiently for someone to notice it. What makes this glass so extraordinary is not just its origin, but its composition. Its clarity is almost unmatched, nearly pure silica, with only trace elements of other minerals. No volcanic glass on Earth holds this same uniformity, and yet here it lies, born not from the slow rise of magma, but from the instant fury of impact. Scientists believe the sheer temperature of the event, possibly over 2400 degrees Celsius, was enough to not only melt the surface but to vaporize it in places. This created the conditions for an almost instantaneous fusing of sand into glass. No time for bubbles to escape, no time for minerals to crystallize, just pure molten transformation, and then stillness. Within that stillness many things were captured. Tiny mineral inclusions known as Le Chatelierite, high-temperature silica glass, show signs of vaporization and recondensation. These are not gentle features, they are the hard evidence of extreme energy. Inside some pieces, scientists have found shocked quartz, a form of the mineral that only appears in nuclear detonations or meteor impacts. These signs are not visible to the naked eye, but under a microscope they tell a powerful story that this glass was not simply heated. It was reborn through pressure, velocity, and time compressed into a single blink. And still, the story grows. Trapped in some fragments are particles of the meteor itself, tiny grains of nickel-rich metal that fell with the object and became embedded in the cooling glass. These grains are alien. Their composition hints at origins beyond Earth, from the asteroid belt, or perhaps even farther. To hold a piece of Libyan desert glass is to hold something that once drifted between planets, touched by the gravity of many suns before ending its journey in our sky. But the desert is a patient keeper. It does not move quickly, and so, for millions of years, the glass remained. Winds covered and uncovered it, storms polished its surfaces, the sun bleached it pale, and all the while it waited. Unlike volcanic landscapes where tectonics bury or break what they make, the desert preserves. Its dryness protects the glass, its emptiness shields it from erosion. And so, even after millions of years, Libyan desert glass lies in plain sight, quiet, unspoiled, present. Humans eventually began to see it. At first, perhaps it was mistaken for quartz or for amber, but those who held it knew it was different. Its warmth within sunlight, its odd smoothness, its mysterious origin all gave it a kind of quiet power. In Egypt it was collected and shaped. Its colour, the colour of the rising sun, linked it to the gods. Scarabs were carved from it, representing rebirth and protection. And when Tutankhamun was laid to rest, the glass was placed over his heart. Not for decoration, but for meaning, for memory. In this small way, the glass that fell from the sky became part of our human story. Even in modern times, its mystery endures. Some have searched for a crater, the scar where the meteor might have struck. But no obvious crater has been found. Some theories suggest a high-altitude airburst, like the Tunguska event in Siberia. Others believe a shallow-angle impact vaporized both the meteor and its crater. Whatever the truth, the glass remains, the only surviving record of what happened. A witness in silence, and it is not just in its beauty or scientific value that this glass speaks. It speaks of connection, of the link between worlds, of the fragile yet powerful meeting between space and Earth. It shows us that impact does not always mean destruction, that from the brightest, hottest, most violent moment, something smooth, soft and glowing can emerge. It reminds us that pressure can create elegance, that collision can leave behind clarity. In the hands of collectors, scientists or simple wanderers, Libyan desert glass continues to offer itself. Not loudly, not urgently, just openly. Its shape is never the same. Some pieces are worn, rounded by time. Others are sharp, fractured, fresh. But all carry the same essence. They hold the memory of the sky. So let us imagine again a field of sand, endless and golden. The wind lifts tiny grains and sets them down again, shifting the surface like a slow sea. Among them lies a piece of glass. It catches the sun. You kneel, lift it, feel its coolness. It is light but firm, it glows faintly in the light. You turn it in your fingers, wondering how long it has waited here. How long since the stars last touched this ground. And in that moment you realize, this is not just geology, it is not just chemistry or history, it is presence. It is the meeting of two stories, one from deep space, one from deep Earth. And in the heart of that meeting this glass was born, not forged in a fire we tend, but in a fire we cannot control. And yet it left behind something gentle. That is the paradox of Libyan desert glass, born of destruction, shaped by force but carried by stillness, by time, by light. And it tells us, sometimes the things that fall apart do not disappear. Sometimes they change, and sometimes they become gems in the sand. Let us walk now into the closing light of this story, where the golden glass of the desert hums softly beneath the sun. The wind continues its tireless dance across the dunes, reshaping the land grain by grain, yet the glass endures. It rests lightly on the surface, a quiet presence among shifting sands, a trace of the moment when the sky collided with the earth. What was once an act of destruction has become a field of luminous silence. Libyan desert glass, scattered like forgotten jewels, is a reminder that even in the heart of impact, there can be grace. In many ways, this glass is a paradox. It exists because of chaos, yet it is so ordered, so pure. Its formation took less than a breath. The sand did not melt over days or hours, but in an instant. The heat, so immense and sudden, transformed it utterly. No crystals had time to grow, no bubbles had time to rise, and yet inside this hurried birth something eternal was made. It is this quality, sudden creation, lasting stillness, that gives the glass its strange magic. It is a window not just into the past, but into the transformation itself. People who walk the desert say you can feel the glass before you see it. There is a weight to its presence, a kind of pull. When the sunlight hits it just right, it glows from within, like a drop of frozen sunlight. It has no voice, yet it speaks. It tells of stars, of speed, of fire that knew no boundaries. And in its silence, it invites you to slow down, to listen, to feel. And what does it teach, this relic of collision? It teaches that not all destruction ends in ruin, that not every impact breaks what it touches. Some impacts reveal, some forge, some bring forth what could not have existed without that force. The desert glass is not a scar, it is a birthmark. It is not a sign of loss, but of transformation. It exists because the earth received something from far away, and chose to become more than it was. In that there is something deeply human. We too experience impacts. Moments that crash into our lives, unexpected, fast, full of heat. We feel we are breaking, dissolving, falling apart. But what if we, like the desert, are capable of forming glass? What if our moments of greatest pressure could leave behind clarity? What if after the fire, something smooth, transparent, and enduring could be born? That is what the glass shows us, not through words, but through its being. That something beautiful can be made in a second of pain. That the story is not over after the strike. That in the stillness afterward, we can become something new, something whole, something that reflects the light. And as science continues to study it, measuring trace elements, simulating impacts, scanning for extraterrestrial particles, the mystery deepens rather than fades. We learn more, but the wonder remains, because Libyan desert glass is not just a substance, it is a question about how we change, about what we hold on to, about what survives. It tells us that Earth is not isolated, that space and sky and land are all part of one story, that now and then the stars fall, and when they do not always destroy. Sometimes they touch gently enough to leave something behind, and sometimes what they leave is light. Imagine, one last time, standing in that wide desert plain. The heat ripples across the ground. Your footsteps leave soft imprints in the sand. You kneel, brush away a few grains, and there it is, a smooth piece of glass glowing like honey in the light. You hold it up, and in its surface the sun dances, the sky turns, the wind passes, and for a moment you are no longer separate from this place. You are part of its story. You're holding the result of a moment that shook the earth and then became still. And in that stillness, you feel something rise, not heat, not sound, but knowing. You know that this world is not fragile, but changeable. That even its sharpest impacts can leave behind clarity. That even in the vastness of time and sky, there are pieces of light that wait for us to find them. That the desert, though empty, is full of memory. This is the story of Libyan desert glass. A tear from the sky, a gift from fire, a gem made in silence. It reminds us that beauty is not always crafted, sometimes it is discovered. Sometimes it is left behind for us to find, years or lifetimes later, gleaming softly under the dust. Not to be owned, but to be understood. Not to be taken, but to be remembered. The earth has never been still. From the moment it formed, it has been a world shaped by collisions. Planetesimals crashed together to build its body. Asteroids scarred its crust. Comets kissed its atmosphere with ice and flame. And yet from these impacts, from force, from pressure, from heat beyond imagining, something extraordinary emerged. Not just mountains and craters, but brilliance, reflection, light. In time, the Earth learned not only how to endure impact, but how to shine through it. And that shine, strangely enough, is often found in glass. Imagine the early Earth, young, molten, restless. The solar system was a crowded dance of rock and debris. Collisions were constant, furious, transformative. When something large struck the Earth, the heat of the impact could melt entire regions of crust. The energy was so intense that sand and rock vaporized, then fell back to the ground in droplets, cooling into tiny spheres of glass as they descended. These spherules, preserved in ancient rock layers, are the Earth's first light, tiny beads that gleam with memory. They are not merely records of violence. They are proof that even in the beginning the Earth turned impact into illumination. Some of the oldest glass on the planet comes from these very impacts. Found in thin layers between sediments, these microtectites tell of collisions so vast they changed the sky, shifted the climate, turned oceans into storms. And yet, these beads remain. No larger than grains of sand, they shine quietly in the fossil record, soft traces of cosmic events long past. Their survival is a kind of defiance, a reminder that destruction is never the end. As Earth matured, the impacts grew fewer but no less profound. When the meteor that ended the reign of the dinosaurs struck what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, the result was catastrophic. Fires swept the world, ash darkened the sky, life changed forever. But in that same moment, glass was born. At the site of the Chicxulub crater, tektites, dark, rounded pieces of impact glass, were scattered across the continents. Some flew as far as Asia, landing thousands of kilometers from their birthplace. Inside them are clues not only to the impact's force, but to the composition of the Earth itself at the time. These tektites are Earth's shock-written poems, each one shaped by pressure, light, and survival. And yet these aren't relics of pain alone. They shimmer. They catch the light. Held between fingers, they gleam like tears that learn to glow. This is Earth's quiet genius, and not just to bear the blow, but to respond with beauty, to take the energy of the cosmos and turn it into something you can hold in your palm. A starfall shaped into stillness. These moments of light are not only in deep history. Even today, when small meteors burn through the atmosphere and hit sandy soil, they sometimes create natural glass. Their heat is enough to fuse sand into smooth, dark pieces. In deserts, in fields, even in frozen tundras, these sudden creations rest like punctuation marks in the Earth's sentence. They may be missed, mistaken for stone, but for those who notice, for those who kneel and look, they are doorways to understanding. To understand Earth's light, we must understand how impact teaches it to shine. Not every burst of pressure makes glass. It takes the right ingredients, enough silica, enough heat, enough speed, and the courage of the land to melt and reset. Glass is not an accident. It is a result, a response, a form of clarity born when the world opens and does not close all the way. And so Earth began to hold light in new ways. In obsidian cliffs cooled from lava, in fulgurites formed by lightning strikes, in tektites formed by the stars. These glasses are not simply materials, they are moments, and they carry within them not just information, but feeling. They tell us that Earth is not a victim of the universe but a participant, that it does not just endure impacts, it learns from them, it transforms them, it shines through them. Let your mind wander to a high plateau, a plain scattered with dark stones. You kneel, pick one up, turn it in your hand. It glows faintly, catching the sun. Its edge is smooth, its weight is soft. This piece of glass may have travelled farther than you can imagine. It may have been thrown from the sky, born of a fire no human ever saw. And yet here it is, waiting, patient, present. This is Earth, shining. In every impact glass there is a kind of honesty, a truth told without words, that pressure creates possibility, that from heat light can come, that from change clarity may rise. This is how Earth learned to shine, not by avoiding impact, but by embracing it. By becoming the glass that remembers, the light that lasts, the silence that follows fire. So when you see glass, in windows, in jewellery, in nature, pause for a moment. Consider its origin. Consider what it means to freeze transformation into transparency. Consider how many times the Earth had to break to offer us something so smooth, so quiet, so luminous. And remember, it is not only what survives that matters, but how it shines afterward. Now let us drift deeper into this story of brilliance born from collision. Earth's relationship with an impact is not just marked by survival, but by expression, a quiet, enduring kind of light that speaks through the very structures it leaves behind. The glass formed by these violent moments is more than a byproduct of heat. It is a way the Earth tells us where it has been wounded, where it has healed, and where it has chosen to remember instead of erase. Each fragment, each bead, each layer of fused material carries the shape of a transformation too quick for the eye but long-lasting in its echo. Tektites, those smooth aerodynamic glassy fragments scattered across continents, are among the most visible witnesses to this process. Their shapes are formed not on Earth but in the air. When a meteor strikes the surface with overwhelming force, it vaporizes rock and soil, throwing material into the upper atmosphere. As these droplets cool mid-flight, they twist and stretch, forming dumbbells, buttons, and droplets. Some even spin as they fall, shaping themselves like tiny black petals. When they land, often thousands of kilometers from the site of the strike, they are no longer dust, no longer stone, but something new. Memory, hardened and silent. One of the largest strewn fields of tektites lies in Southeast Asia. Known as Indochinite glass, these pieces are dark, often glossy, and incredibly consistent in shape and chemistry. They are estimated to be around 800,000 years old, and yet they still gleam as though they cooled just yesterday. Inside them are trapped the pressure and composition of the impact. Their isotopes tell stories of what minerals were present, how hot the fireball was, how fast the Earth spun under the shock. But to the untrained hand, they simply feel smooth, like worry stones shaped by skyfall. Even more mysterious are the Australasian tektites, which have been found from China to Australia without a confirmed crater. Scientists debate whether the impact crater lies beneath the sea or buried under millions of years of sediments, but the glass remains, resting on beaches, hiding in soil, clinking in the pockets of those who notice their unusual luster. The crater is lost, the moment is lost, but the result, the light, is still here. And it is not only in the physical beauty of these objects that their story matters, it is in the lesson they carry, that when the unimaginable happens, the Earth responds not just with scars, but with clarity. The surface may crack, the skies may darken, but deep in the chaos, silica melts and forms a new surface. The minerals reorganize, the energy finds stillness. In a world that has seen so much impact, the survival of beauty is not an accident. It is a pattern. It is the Earth's way of moving forward, by turning even catastrophe into craft. This idea is not limited to tektites. In other parts of the world, such as Germany's Ries crater, impact glass is found fused within the bedrock. These glasses, often greenish or brown, form in sheets or veins. They contain shocked minerals, quartz, feldspar, minerals whose very crystal structures were rearranged by the force of the collision. The glass carries these minerals within it, like bones set in amber. They are not just beautiful, they are diagnostic. Scientists use them to read the history of the strike, how fast it hit, how deep it reached, how the land was thrown. In the Sahara, in South America, even in Antarctica, these traces continue to be discovered. Small signs, glassy witnesses, the Earth does not hide its past. It leaves pieces of it scattered across the world, waiting for us to pick them up, to listen, and in each one is the same message. That light is not always what comes from above. Sometimes it rises from the point of impact. Let us imagine, gently, a child walking along a riverbank 100,000 years ago. She sees a black stone glinting in the mud. She picks it up, turns it in her fingers. It's smoother than the others, warmer. She holds it up to the sun. It shines. She does not know the science. She does not know the impact, the fire, the pressure. But she feels something in it. She keeps it. And when she grows older, she gives it to her own child. And that child holds it too and sees the same shine. This is the gift of impact glass, that it speaks across time, not in a loud voice, but in the persistence of presence. And even today, as researchers discover new deposits, as they examine their structures under electron microscopes and categorize their compositions, they are still drawn to that same shine, that same realization that the Earth, after everything it has endured, still glows. In the end, what this tells us is something simple, something slow, that light is not always born of fire alone, that sometimes light is born of change, of the instant when pressure meets potential, of the moment when Earth says, I will not be broken by this, I will become something new. The glass then becomes more than substance. It becomes metaphor. It becomes promise. That clarity can emerge from impact. That beauty can come from heat. That memory shaped in silence can still catch the light of a sun that rises every day no matter what has fallen. Now let us return slowly from the heights of impact and drift gently into reflection, guided by the soft gleam of glass left behind. The story of how Earth learned to shine through an impact is not only about force and fire, it is about patience, it is about resilience, it is about what remains when everything else has passed. The final stillness after the chaos, the light that stays even after the sky has darkened. Because when the Earth is struck, whether by meteor, lightning, or pressure from within, it does not only break, it transforms, and from that transformation something clear, something delicate, something lasting is born. Consider the silence that follows an impact. The Earth may shake, the sky may fill with ash, but eventually the dust settles, the winds calm, and there, beneath layers of change, the first reflections begin. In a shard of glass still warm from the blast, in a bead of tektite cradled by soil, in the faint glow of silica cooled by stars. These are not just physical remains, they are records of what the planet has chosen to keep, and what it chooses to keep, it shines. In ancient myths, people spoke of fire falling from the sky, of God striking the earth, of stars that split the land. They did not yet have science. They did not yet have words like impactite or shock metamorphism or Le Chatelierite. But they had awe. They had curiosity. And in the glimmer of natural glass, they saw something sacred. Something that had come through fire and not burned. Something that had touched the sky and stayed behind. We still carry this wonder, though we now measure it. We still look at tektites, fulgurites, obsidian and say, how? Why here? Why this shine? And the answer is not always found in equations. Sometimes it is in the feeling of holding one, in noticing how a piece of black glass catches the light at dusk, in seeing your own reflection on its surface and realizing it is reflecting the sky behind you too. It reflects everything. It holds nothing. And in doing so, it becomes something more than substance. It becomes witness. Glass, in its purest form, is transparent. It neither hides nor distorts. It allows the world to pass through it, unchanged. And yet the process that creates it is anything but gentle. It begins in extremes, in heat, in speed, in chaos. And yet the product is calm, smooth, still. This too is how Earth shines, not with resistance but with acceptance, not by shielding itself from change, but by letting change pass through and crystallize. And this process continues even now. Each time lightning strikes the ground and fuses the sand. Each time lava cools into obsidian. Each time a meteor traces its final arc and kisses the earth with fire. Glass is born. A new moment, clear and reflective, added to the long memory of the world. And somewhere, someday, someone will find it. Perhaps a scientist. Perhaps a child. Perhaps a wanderer with sand on their shoes and a question in their heart. And when they hold it, they will hold not just a material, but a message. The message is quiet, but it is powerful. That the earth has been through so much. That it carries the marks of impact not as wounds, but as windows. That every collision, every burst of heat, every shattering strike has the potential to become something clear. Something beautiful. Something that remembers not the pain, but the transformation. This is not just a geological truth. It is a human one. We too are shaped by impacts, by moments that feel too fast, too hot, too much. And like the earth, we break. But also like the earth, we cool, we form edges, we hold light, we learn to reflect. We become our own kind of glass, smooth in some places, fractured in others, but always capable of catching the sun. So now, as we close this story, let us return one final time to the idea of light. Not the blinding light of explosions or the burning light of stars, but the soft, persistent glow of survival, the shine that comes after, the clarity that remains, in every piece of natural glass, every tektite scattered in soil, every fulgurite buried beneath dunes, every obsidian flake once sharpened by a hand. There is this glow, this reminder, this quiet truth that the earth has been struck by the universe again and again, and yet it still shines. And so can we. Let the glass remind you. Let it rest in your hand and tell you its story of pressure, of fire, of change. Let it reflect your face, your sky, your own journey. And let it be enough to know that when the world changes you, when it heats you, when it breaks you open, you are not ending. You are beginning. You are learning, like the earth, to shine through impact. Beneath the surface of every broken piece of glass, there is a memory. Not just of what it once was, a window, a bottle, a bead, but of how it became. And deeper still, in the smallest fractures and curves, there are older stories. Stories of heat, of pressure, of transformation so complete that even the shape it held before was left behind. Whether shaped by a volcano, a lightning bolt, or a falling star, glass remembers not in words or images, but in structure. It holds the moment it froze, it keeps the tension, it reflects the silence that followed fire. And so even when it breaks, each shard carries the full memory of the whole. Let us begin with a single piece, a thin sliver of obsidian, no longer part of the larger stone from which it once came. Its edge is sharp, curved like a crescent, a smooth shell-like fracture tracing through its body. This is conchoidal breakage, the signature of volcanic glass. When glass shatters, it doesn't split randomly. It follows patterns determined by the way atoms were frozen during cooling. That pattern, that flow locked in place, guides the break, shapes the edge, defines the shard. So even in its brokenness, the glass speaks of its origin. The memory is not lost, it is refracted. Some of the oldest tools made by human hands were shaped from such broken glass. Obsidian, because of its predictable fracture, was a favoured material for crafting blades and arrowheads. These tools were not just products of skill, they were collaborations with the Earth's memory. The maker struck the stone, guided the flake, revealed the edge, and the stone responded by showing where it had once flowed. In every tool, the movement of molten lava echoed, held by the human hand, passed forward in time. The shard became not just useful but meaningful, an ancient conversation between fire and intent. Yet glass does not only break in ways we can see. Under microscopes, scientists observe how stress fractures travel through it, how bubbles form and stretch as the material cools. These tiny imperfections are not flaws, they are records. They show how fast the glass formed, how hot it once was, how it cooled, how it moved before becoming still. In some cases, these features are used to trace eruptions, date impacts, study ancient climates. A broken shard, barely larger than a fingernail, might hold within it information about a world that existed tens of thousands of years ago. Even in nature, shattered glass persists as a storyteller. On the edges of fulgurites, those glass tubes formed by lightning, thin cracks spider outward, marking the violent path of energy through sand. Inside meteorite impact glasses, tiny radial fractures hint at the shock waves that pulse through the Earth during collision. These fractures do not erase the glass's value, they deepen it. They show us where stress moved, how heat flowed, where the Earth said yes to change. But perhaps the most poetic truth about glass is that it never forgets being whole. When it breaks, it does not discard the past. It carries it in the curvature of each piece, in the light it still bends, in the temperature at which it melts once more. Even recycled glass, melted down, reshaped, cooled again, holds echoes of its former form. Molecular bonds may shift, but the memory of transformation remains. Each new version still belongs to the same long lineage of change. And this memory is not just physical, it is emotional. We see it when stained glass windows are repaired, their colours preserved, their fragments rejoined. We feel it when sea glass washes up on shore, softened by time, its edges rounded but still shining. We sense it in the way a broken bottle glitters in the sun, catching the eye with the same intensity as a jewel. These pieces speak to something inside us, that brokenness is not an end, that the past can still reflect light, that beauty is not erased by fracture, only changed. In ancient times, people believed that broken glass could carry protection, that a shard could ward off evil, that something once whole, now divided, had more power than before. Perhaps this was not just superstition, but recognition, a sense that within every piece was the whole story, and that by holding even one part, we were holding the entire journey. So imagine now you are walking along a path after a storm. The ground is damp, the air still. At your feet something glints. You reach down and pick up a piece of glass, curved, cool amber in the fading light. It fits against your palm, strangely familiar. You do not know where it came from, but you know it has been through fire, through motion, through breakage, and yet it reflects the sky. That is what the memory inside every shard teaches us, that nothing is ever truly lost, that each fracture contains form, that the story of heat, of pressure, of time and change, all of it is held in the curve of something small enough to slip between your fingers, and if you pause long enough to notice it, you will see not just the break, but the brilliance that came before. Let us travel now through the journey of a shard, not only as a fragment of matter, but as a fragment of meaning. A shard of glass is not just what remains when something is broken. It is the part that carries forward, the piece that continues. The Earth makes glass through heat and sudden change, but the moment it cools, it begins a second story, one of movement, of time, of touch. A shard might be buried in ash, washed into a river, carried in a pocket, dropped again, found again. It gathers layers of experience not by choice but by existence. It is always recording, always reflecting, always waiting for someone to see it, not for what it lacks, but for what it holds. In archaeological sites across the world, some of the most informative finds are not intact objects, but fragments. Pottery shards, tool flakes, window glass from fallen homes. These pieces may seem insignificant, too small to matter, too damaged to use, and yet they often tell more than the whole. A broken obsidian blade shows how it was struck, the angle of force, the purpose it served. A shard of stained glass reveals the colour palette of a forgotten cathedral. In the smallest edge, the entire pattern can be traced. We learn from what remains, not in spite of its incompleteness, but because of it. A shard is concentrated story, a distilled version of something once larger, now focused. And this idea of memory held in pieces reaches even deeper in the natural world. In Antarctica, ancient impact glass lies buried beneath layers of snow and ice. These glasses, shattered from asteroid collisions millions of years ago, contain tiny bubbles of air from ancient atmospheres, samples of Earth's breath before humans. Even when cracked, their internal landscapes remain undisturbed. The fractures do not diminish the message, they protect it. Just as tree rings hold the years and sediment holds the storms, so too does glass, in every fault line, in every sheen. In volcanic fields, the ground is littered with fragments of obsidian. These shards crunch underfoot, sharp and gleaming. They are the broken remains of lava flows that cooled too quickly, fractured under pressure, shattered by frost. And yet they are not debris. They are the texture of the land. Each one holds the shape of the flow, the memory of heat, the pull of gravity. Their edges, smoothed by wind or water, speak not only of breakage but of time. They are not ruins, they are records. Sometimes the memory inside a shard isn't only in what it is, but in where it is found. On a beach, sea glass, softened and frosted by the tumbling waves, tells a story of human and ocean combined. A bottle thrown or dropped or forgotten, shattered, carried by tide and salt and stone, transformed into something new. The shard that once had sharp edges is now smooth as skin. Its colour has faded, but its light has deepened. It is no longer what it was, and yet in its smoothness we find something more beautiful than the original could have imagined. The sea has written its poem into the glass. We too carry such poems. When we are broken, by change, by loss, by the simple pressure of being alive, we fracture. But like glass, we don't shatter into dust. We become pieces. We become edges. And in those edges, in the curves of what we still are, we carry everything we were. Our stories remain. Our shine remains. We may not be whole, but we are still true. Even in the lab, when a shard of glass is studied, it is not dismissed for its size or shape. It is examined for its internal memory. Scientists use spectroscopy, electron microscopy, chemical analysis, all to reveal what is hidden within. Light is passed through it. Energy is measured. And in the responses, they find the past. They find the temperatures it survived, the forces it felt, the substances it touched. Even if the shard is less than a centimetre wide, it is enough to write an entire history. Because glass, no matter how small, carries the conditions of its creation. There is something humbling in that. To think that a piece of what was once a window, a bowl, a lens, or a lava flow, now broken, still knows its story, still offers it freely to those who care to look. It teaches us that being complete is not the same as being meaningful, that sometimes what is left behind after a change is the part that matters most. So when you next find a piece of glass, pause, hold it up to the light, turn it in your hand, feel the weight, not of the object, but of the moment it came from. Was it a fire, a fall, a blast of heat, a slow shaping? Somewhere in its surface the memory remains. You are holding not a broken thing, but a part of the world that chose to endure, that chose to continue in another form. And maybe you will begin to see yourself in that shard, not as something fractured, but as something layered, something reflective, something born of both impact and stillness. And like the shard, perhaps you'll see that memory is not just about preservation, but about presence, about being here, now and still shining. Now, let us arrive softly at the end of this journey, not with finality, but with the gentle understanding that even endings can hold light. Every shard of glass, no matter how small, carries within it a complete story. It may have been part of something larger, something once whole, but it is not less because it is now a part. In fact, The memory it holds is sharpened by its edges. It reflects not only what it once was, but what it has become. In this way, the memory inside every shard is not passive. It is alive. It glows quietly, asking only to be seen. Across history and culture, shards have been gathered, honoured, repurposed. In ancient Japan, the art of kintsugi repaired broken pottery, not by hiding cracks, but by filling them with gold. The floor was not erased, it was celebrated. The vessel became more beautiful because it had been broken. And though this is not glass, the principle applies. A glass shard is not ruined because it is fractured. It is more precise, more intentional. It reveals the forces that shaped it. It becomes a map of transformation. Even in nature we see this. In volcanic landscapes, the edges of broken obsidian shine in sunlight, brilliant against black rock and grey dust. These pieces are not accidents. They are expressions of the volcano's memory. They cooled too quickly, cracked from pressure, shattered from frost. But in those breaks, they caught light. They became more than flow. They became form. If you walk through such a field and collect these shards, what you are holding is a series of paused stories, each one waiting to be understood, not completed. Sometimes the memory in glass outlasts everything else. In places where cities have crumbled, where temples have fallen, where centuries have washed over stone and wood, glass shards still remain. A coloured fragment from a window, a piece of bottle from an old marketplace, a bit of mirror reflecting sky long after its frame is gone. These shards outlive their structures. They lie in soil, in walls, in rivers, and in them we find what the past did not forget. Even the sea participates in this slow remembering. Sea glass, tumbled and softened by salt and wave, returns to shore altered but intact. Once sharp, now smooth, once clear, now frosted. It no longer resembles the object it came from, but it holds the same ingredients, the same atoms, the same origin. To find a piece of sea glass is to witness the patience of the world, the way it grinds pain into gentleness, the way it polishes memory into something you can hold. And still, the glass continues to break. It happens every day, by accident, by heat, by time, yet every break is not an end, but a beginning of a new fragment, a new reflection. Scientists, poets, wanderers, they all return to glass, to study, to describe, to hold, because something in it remains untouched by ruin. Its memory is not fragile, even when the form is. It teaches us that memory is not about perfection. It is about resilience, about clarity, about the ability to hold light even in pieces. And this is perhaps the deepest lesson, that we, like glass, are not diminished by our fractures. We carry forward everything we've passed through. The moments of heat, the sudden shifts, the quiet coolings. The cracks we carry are not signs of weakness. They are records of strength. They are maps of survival. They are the proof that we have been changed, and yet remain clear. So now, if you find a piece of broken glass, in the soil, by the sea, in an old drawer, hold it carefully. Let the light find it. Turn it gently, feel its smooth and jagged edges. You're not just holding a remnant. You are holding a moment that resisted time, a transformation that didn't disappear, a memory that became something new. Let it remind you of all the ways the earth holds its stories. In glass forged by fire, in shards shaped by pressure, in surfaces cracked but still reflective. And let it remind you too that your own story, fractured though it may feel, is still shining. That you, like the shard, are evidence not of what broke, but of what remains. Because inside every shard is not just a memory of wholeness, but the clarity of continuation, the light that finds its way in, the silence that follows the storm, the stillness that holds everything. And as long as even one piece remains, the story is not lost. It lives, it glows, it waits to be seen again. There are moments when the sky does not roar but glows, when its fire does not cry out, but falls softly. These are not storms of thunder or lightning, but storms of light, where the universe whispers instead of shouts. Every night, tiny pieces of space brush against our atmosphere. Dust, pebbles, fragments of forgotten comets. They streak through the sky as meteors, burning for a second, then gone. But sometimes, when the sky opens wider and something larger enters, not just dust, but a body of stone or ice, it doesn't simply vanish. It touches the earth. And in that moment, the silence of the sky becomes something solid, something made of glass, Long ago, across plains now forgotten, a meteor arrived not with thunder, but with pressure, with heat, with speed so immense the air itself became fire. But there was no one there to name it, no one to measure the angle, to record the sound, only the earth. And the earth, when struck, responded in the only way it could. It changed. The surface melted, sand turned to liquid, wind paused, and in the heart of that instant glass formed, not by human hand, not by slow geology, but by the breath of the sky itself. These glasses, known as impactites, are not made from lava. They are not born from the Earth's own fire. They are created by collision, by space meeting ground. In that friction, that unrelenting speed, something ancient becomes new. The pressure is so intense that rocks do not shatter, they vaporize. The ground does not fracture, it flows. And from that sudden, impossible melting comes a kind of purity, a kind of silence. Glass is born again, not from within, but from without. And the earth remembers. In Argentina, black glass beads lie scattered across the plains. In the Czech Republic, green moldavites glint in the riverbeds. Rare, bottle-coloured tektites formed from a single strike some 15 million years ago. In Africa, brown and gold impact glass rests where no volcano has ever erupted. These pieces do not belong to their surroundings, they belong to the sky, to the silence that came after the flame. Scientists study their compositions. They find high silica content, unusual isotopes, signs of shock and rapid cooling. They compare them to the chemical signatures of meteorites. But even after the numbers are gathered, a question remains. What does it mean that the sky can burn so brightly, so quietly, and leave behind something so clear? Because that's what these glasses are. Clarity made from chaos. They do not boast, they do not overwhelm. They simply lie where they fell, untouched except by wind. And when someone picks them up, perhaps hundreds or thousands of years later, they are still cool to the touch, still smooth, still perfect in their imperfection. These glasses remind us that not all burning leaves behind ash, that sometimes what survives fire is not ruin, but reflection, that even when space crashes into Earth, it does not always bring endings, it can bring beginnings, the start of a new layer in the soil, the birth of a new material, a new kind of light. And that light is not the blinding flash of arrival. It is the shimmer that lingers, the gleam that remains, the softened glow of glass formed not in a forge, but in the meeting of world and sky. The earth, once struck, chose not to break completely. It chose to cool, to preserve, to shine. So now I imagine standing in one of those impact fields. The air is still, filmed with the horizon wide. At your feet you see a green sliver. You kneel, brush it from the sand and lift it into the sun. It catches the light, not loudly but fully, as if it remembers the fire that made it, as if it honours the silence that followed. That is how the sky sometimes burns, not in fury but in stillness, and that is how the earth sometimes remembers, not in scars but in glass. Let us walk deeper now into the silence that followed the burn, into the long, quiet aftermath of an impact that came and went faster than a blink, yet left behind something that could last for millions of years. The sky that burned did not scream. It did not leave behind fire, smoke, or even sound for long. What it left was a new kind of memory, spread across continents in the form of translucent green, black, and golden glass. These fragments of light, known as tektites, impactites, and spherules, were not born to shine. But somehow they do. Even after all this time, in places far from any crater, these pieces still appear. They lie in riverbeds, buried in clay, tucked into hillsides. Their source sometimes is gone, erased by erosion, hidden beneath the sea or buried beneath the crust. But the glass remains. Its presence is enough. You do not need to see the crater to know the story. The earth remembers for you. Take moldavite, for example, found primarily in the Czech Republic, but carried by trade and time across Europe. It formed during an ancient impact when a meteor slammed into what is now Germany. The collision vaporized rock flung molten debris into the air and scattered green glass across the landscape. These droplets cooled while falling, stretched into twisted fern-like forms, and hardened before touching ground. Today people wear moldavite as jewellery. They hold it up to the light and marvel at its forest green glow, but what they are truly holding is sky fire, Earth's glass memory of a moment so intense that it fused stone into story. Elsewhere, in the Libyan desert, glass born of a separate impact lies strewn like dusted gems, The airburst that created it may have happened high in the atmosphere, yet it had enough heat to melt the very surface of the Sahara. The result was golden glass, almost pure silica, some of the most pristine natural glass ever found. Within it lie clues, trace elements that speak of a fire not of this world, bits of the meteor itself, air trapped before humans ever breathed, pressure signatures that could not be made by any human machine. Scientists cut and polish these glasses to peer deeper. Under microscopes they find shocked minerals, flow lines, and crystallized inclusions that freeze the motion of molten rock. They analyze isotopes to determine where the meteor came from. They map strewn fields to understand the force of impact. But even after all this, after the chemical breakdowns and the radiometric dating, the feeling remains that these glasses are more than just geology. They are windows into a moment when the Earth was briefly, brilliantly changed. Because the glass itself is not chaotic, it is calm. It has no jagged rage, no burned edges. It cooled, settled, found form. That is part of its mystery, that from such speed, such heat, such unimaginable energy, came something so still, so clear, so quiet. And it is this silence that tells us the truth. Not every change is loud. Not every transformation is visible as it happens. Sometimes the most powerful events come and go in a breath, and only later do we find what they left behind. Sometimes what looks like a stone in the dirt is a memory from the sky. Even in space, the story repeats. On the moon, Apollo astronauts brought back tiny glass beads, spherules, formed by ancient lunar impacts. These are not like the tektites of Earth. They lack air, they cooled in vacuum, but they are still glass, still record keepers, still drops of frozen sky fire. And now they rest in vaults on Earth, holding within them the quiet of the cosmos, the history of collisions that shaped a lifeless world. Here on Earth, life goes on around the glass. Plants grow near it, rivers flow over it, people build roads and homes upon it. Most never notice, but for those who do, for those who feel the weight of a small, smooth shard in their hand and wonder where it came from, there is something else, a shift, a sense that time has widened, that what they're holding is older than story, deeper than history, a reminder that the Earth is not alone, that it has been touched by things from far away, and that those touches, though violent, have become part of the world's softness. This is what it means to find glass where the sky once burned. It means you've found not a remnant, but a record. Not just a thing, but a process. Not just a shape, but a truth. That change, even the most overwhelming, disorienting kind, can leave behind clarity. That in the centre of pressure, of heat, of collision, something beautiful can form. Something fragile but enduring. And so the pieces remain in pockets, in collections, in museums, in rings, in rivers, in deserts, each one quietly carrying the moment when a rock from space became a part of Earth's memory. Not by force, but by light, by cooling, by stillness. So when you next hold a piece of glass in your palm, whether it was made by man, by fire, or by falling sky, listen closely. Not with your ears, but with the part of you that understands silence. You might hear it. The echo of a sky that burned without sound. And the world that held its breath turned to glass and began to shine. Now let us rest in the quiet after the story, the part where nothing moves, and yet everything lingers. The glass left behind by the sky's silent fire does not fade quickly. It lies under dust, among roots, between river stones. It catches the light in ways that ask you to stop, to notice. And if you do, if you reach down and lift that glass into your hand, something simple happens. You connect with a moment that never made a sound but changed the Earth forever. The sky did not shout when it touched the ground, it simply arrived. And when it left, the land glowed. That glow remains in every shard, every bead, every smooth green drop. They are not reminders of ruin. They are evidence of endurance, and beauty, and grace. This is the gift of the sky that burned in silence. It left behind something clear, something quiet, something that lets us remember not through sound or flame, but through the shimmer of what remained.